Hey guys, James from Appalachian DIY. We are here today to talk about this soaker hose from Miracle Gro. You can actually buy it from Home Depot, Lowe's, Amazon, places like that. Um, Several different brands kind of brand the same actual hose, so you may see it under another brand name like Element or something like that, depending on where you go, whether it be Lowe's or Home Depot. We actually saw this one on Amazon. It's 25 bucks. You can get it Lowe's 25 bucks, and Home Depot it's 25 bucks basically everywhere you go. So either way, first we're going to show you kind of the setup, and then we'll get to the review after that. So the first step is to uncoil the hose and let it sit outside in the sun for at least an hour, basically until it's nice and flexible, and you may have to go out there and kind of straighten it out a few times, but once it's nice and warm from the sun, you'll be able to work with it. Before it's set out in the sun long enough, you really don't want to try and cut the hose or do any sort of modifications or lay it down where you want it, because you're going to end up cutting in the wrong spot or something like that. So here I'm just straightening out the hose. It's been sitting outside for about an hour or so. It's getting, pretty flexible. You may have to, do this a few times until you're satisfied with how easy it is to work with. And so basically, once you can kind of roll it out straight like this, and there doesn't seem to be any resistance, like it's been coiled up in a box for a year, then you can go ahead and get to laying it out in your garden. So the hose feels nice and flexible now, so we're going to go ahead and pull it over to the garden and get started. Alright, the first thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and pull a length of hose down my first row in my garden, and from there I'm going to get these pieces kind of organized and see what we're working with. So you can see we have multiple T's. We have some T's here. This is going to be where you can screw the hose onto. Then some normal T's where the soaker hose itself would attach to. We've got some plugs here down at the bottom right. That's just going to plug a T in that, just to keep the water from coming out. Alright, so what we're doing here is I'm going to go ahead and figure out what connectors I need where, get those kind of laid out. So right here I'm going to do a T. There's going to be another T, and we're going to have another T down here at the end, which will end up capping off. And down here, this is the end of the garden. I'm just putting the caps for or the ends with to cap the hose off, basically, so that the water won't just come out. So once you're satisfied with the length of hose, you can go ahead and cut it. Make sure to leave a little bit more than you think you're going to need, because you can always trim that off, but if you make it too short, you just kind of SOL. So once that's on, you go ahead and just force the hose into the connector. It's kind of tricky to get in there. You just kind of have to use your strength just a little bit. I'm From the T here, we're going over to the second row in the garden, and we're going to connect it to that T right there. So we're satisfied with the length here. Go ahead and snip it. Alright, go ahead and snip it again, and for each row we'll have the little short section of hose. We'll have the splices here in the middle, the T connectors, and then on the end here also using a T, but we'll cap off one end. So my connectors are now laid out. I'm going to go ahead and start laying the other lengths of hose, and I'm satisfied with the length here, so we'll go ahead and cut just a little bit more than I think I'm going to need. This is the third row here, so basically it's all the same for each row. I'm just going to cut a slightly more length of hose than I need, and then I'll trim it up once I'm ready to attach the connectors. Alright, so here I'm just kind of checking over things, make sure I got all my connectors right and my hoses are, the right length and such. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and cap off the ends, and that way it'll kind of give me an idea of where exactly the hose ends. And then once I'm satisfied with that, go ahead and connect the little spliced in sections of hose. So this section will be used to attach the garden hose to. I'm going to run it just outside of the garden. Alright, so here's the completed soaker hose setup. You can see I have it ran all the way here from end to end with T's in the middle. The next step is to go ahead and test the hose before I bury it, just to make sure that everything's working. Okay, go ahead and connect your garden hose. Turn the water pressure on very low. Now watch for the water. This is the way you want it to look. You don't want it to be spraying out or gushing or anything like that. You just want the tiny little water droplets forming. Check all your captains, all the splices, all the T's, everything. Make sure that there's no water that seems to be leaking out more at these. If so, you may need to replace those fittings or push the hoses on more. Okay, the last step is to bury the hose. This is really up to you if you want to bury it or not. It will protect it from the sun throughout the summer if you bury it, or at least if you don't bury it under the dirt, put it under some mulch or something like that. This is just going to help make it last longer. So I'm choosing to bury mine about an inch under the dirt. Like I said, it's really up to you what you want to do. It is recommended by the manufacturer to at least put it slightly under the dirt. I'm going a little bit deeper on mine just so I don't have to worry about it. Okay, as you can see, the insulation is nice and clean. The only exposed piece of hose is right at the end where the garden hose is going to attach to. Everything else is very nice, clean, no hose in sight. Alright guys, we are back, and here's the soaker hose. It's been in the ground now for about a month. We've got most things planted, some from seeds, some we transplanted from containers. that we planted from seeds, and everything's doing great. We've got a few different soil types to show you. As you may have noticed whenever I was putting it in the ground, we've got over here mostly red clay. It's mixed in with some topsoil and some composted manure. Over here, it's mostly sand, which we brought in. There's some red clay mixed in just from where we were digging, and then the rest is topsoil and composted manure. Over here, same thing, it's even more sand, and as we get further over, it's more and more of sand and the manure. So these are garlic. We already planted these. This is the first thing that we planted in the garden before we even had the soaker hose. And as soon as basically within the first week or so of having the soaker hose, these things really shot up. So they're doing real good. We just ran the, you may have noticed earlier that I just ran the hose kind of around where the garlics we had initially planted. So they're doing really good. But anyways, let's look at the spread pattern here of the soaker hose. So this hose has been on now for about 10 minutes. So let's look at the what we can see where the water pattern here. It's pretty obvious. You can follow along and see the wet spots where the hose is working. It's kind of hard, and because this is mostly clay dirt right here, it you know, the water kind of, it's hard to penetrate clay. So what we normally do is to get the desired water that we want for these is we turn it on for about an hour and a half, hour 45, something like that. And once we do that, about at the end of hour 45, so here's where the hose is at, you can see. So after about an hour and 45 minutes or so, the spread pattern, basically you can see that it's wet all the way back here. So that's probably about 8 inches maybe on either side, and that's clay. Now it's a little different in the sand and the topsoil because it penetrates it a lot easier. So after about, so like I said, this is about 10 minutes right here. You can see where it's wet already. So after about an hour and 45 minutes, this whole section here, basically almost all the way from divider to divider, is completely wet. So but anything under that, we've noticed that if your plants are a little bit too far, it may look like they're not getting any water. But these, like say this bell pepper right here, initially we only ran the hose for about, say, an hour just to test it out to see like if this is going to be close enough. And we did that for maybe a week or so, and this plant didn't seem like it was doing bad at all, like it wasn't getting enough water. It seemed like it was fine. So realistically, I think as long as the dirt underneath stays moist, then you know it doesn't have to be right next to the hose to be effective. Okay, let me show you how I turn the water on. It's on right now, but this is how I turn it on because this does require low pressure. I just barely turn it on like that. That might even be too much, just so you can just start hearing it open, because this is does require very low pressure. So, and we're working with a 100-foot hose here, but it doesn't seem to affect it. What I like to do is every time I water, I like to just check the whole length of where your hose is installed, just to make sure that it didn't come apart somewhere. So you can see we've got water all the way to the end. So it starts over there, we've got it all the way to the end here. You can see it's wet. You can see it's wet there. This whole lettuce patch is wet because we watered it. But if you if you're unsure, you can kind of dig around and find your hose and make sure it's still wet. Okay, I don't know where it's at right here, but anyways, and then over here as well, you can see that this is all wet. So you can see this is obviously wet, so the hose is working the whole length. So this garden, just for size comparison, if you're trying to do this garden is 17 foot by 12 foot, and we had maybe 25-ish feet left of the hose after covering all 4 of these rows here. So basically what I'm getting at is I did read one review that stated that only about 80 feet of this hose is effective, and after about 80 feet of it, no water comes out. So we're just under 80 feet and we've got water from end to end. So I can't speak for that person that reviewed that or that comment whether or not that's the case. And that may be a straight length of hose. So if you remember the way I had this set up, it's not one straight length of hose. We got it started here, it goes straight, it tees off here, and then goes straight, it tees off right there, goes straight, and then again right there on that very last row, and then of course the two walkways there and there's no hose. So it's about 80 total feet, but it's not straight line. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about watering times and things like that. So I already told you we put it on low pressure. That's what it says on the box to do. And you know, you can see by all the fittings, you just push them on with your hand. There's no type of clamp. It's, you know, so obviously it's not built for high pressure, and there's no telling what it would do if you turn it all the way up, blow the fittings apart, or just, you know, just not work like it's supposed to. I'm not going to try that, so you can just speculate on what would happen if you were to do that. But as far as the length of time that we're watering, like I said, we're watering about an hour and 45 minutes at a time. From the little chart on the back of the box, it kind of gives you an idea of how long to leave the water on to get the desired amount of inches. So we're aiming for about 1.5 inches or so a week. It's April now. It's already in the 80s some days, mostly 60s and 70s, but we're in the 80s right now. So what we're shooting at right now, it seems to be working fine, and all the plants seem like they're doing great, is about 1 hour and 45 minutes, 3 days a week. So the requirements are about 1.5 inches on average for what we have here in the garden per week. So rather than doing that all at one time, we're splitting it over 3 days, just to try it out and see how this soaker hose is actually going to work, and it seems to be working fine. So that's what we're kind of shooting at, is around 1.5 hours times 3 to get about 1.5 inches per week. And it's kind of, there's a trick if you want to learn, if you want to see exactly how much the soaker hose is doing for your water pressure, where you would fill up, like say a tuna can, you know, which is about 1 inch or so high, filled up with dirt, put the soaker hose on top of it, and then, you know, turn it on and see how long it takes to completely fill that, you know, tuna can with water. So if you really want to get exact, then, you know, go for that. But, you know, it doesn't have to be exact. You just don't want to overwater it. And you can just kind of tell by looking at the plants if they're getting too much, if they're getting too little. You know, stick your finger in the dirt and, you know, a good ways down, and see if it's moist or not. You know, if it's still moist, you know, a couple days after you water, it's probably still fine. So, all right, quality of the hose. Well, it seems fine. It's a $25 hose. You shouldn't expect, you know, like extremely superb quality that's going to last 10 years or anything like that. But I think, from what I can tell, as long as it's mostly covered with dirt and you don't really mess with anything too much. I mean, the only thing you really have to mess with is this piece right here. The rest of it, you know, you can see it under the ground working, so we know it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. I wouldn't leave it out in the sun all season long because it's a $25 hose. So we'll kind of leave that at that for the moment. So what you're kind of concerned with are going to be your plastic fittings. How well are they going to hold up? Well, the one that obviously is going to get the most abuse is going to be this piece here that connects to the hose. It's probably going to be the only piece that has exposure to the sun, so we know it's not going to last there, you know, forever. But it comes with 4 pieces of these, so you know, if one breaks or it gets rotten from the sun or whatever, then, you know, we have some backups. But one thing I want to talk about here is that this thing, it tends to leak out. You can kind of see it right there. It's kind of leaking out, and sometimes it'll even spray out. So I thought initially, when we installed it, that maybe this piece was just bad, it was leaking, so I put on another one. It does the exact same thing. So what it seems to be is that the water restrictor inside this is that its purpose is to obviously restrict the flow of water to a certain amount to the hose, but also to release the remainder of the water out here somewhere or whatever, so that this piece doesn't just, blow up from excess water pressure. So obviously the restriction here will keep the flow of water as much as it can back here inside the hose, just like, say, if the faucet wasn't turned on all the way, but the rest of it will just come out here onto the ground. So after changing out the other piece, I realized that it wasn't defective. It's just doing what it's supposed to do. If it starts like blowing water all over the place, you either have the pressure up too high, or the piece actually might be defective. But from what I can see so far, even at the lowest possible that I can turn the faucet on, it still leaks. So that's just the way it's going to be because of the design of this hose. So the quality seems fine for a $25 hose. I have no real complaints in the way of that. It does what it's supposed to do. All the plants look great, and you can just turn it on and forget about it. Basically, we set an alarm because we will forget to turn it off, and it ran for 16 hours one day. So I would use the alarm or have a timer or something like that, because you will forget about it since you don't see it. Alright guys, so we're gonna wrap this up here. The price is great on the hose. It's easy to set up. You don't need any tools really other than a pair of scissors to cut the hose. Put it just under the top of the dirt so that the sun doesn't beat down on it. And also, I think it probably will soak better in and do what it's supposed to do if it's just slightly under the top of the dirt. The types of dirt that you're using may change how deep you want to bury it, or if you want to bury it at all, or you may put mulch over it, whatever. So we've got like 3 common types of dirt here. We've got the clay, which I'm sorry if you're having to deal with this like we do, but if you water it correctly and add some other stuff in there to kind of break up the clay, then you can get good production out of even red clay. Sand, topsoil type dirts, it's going to penetrate these dirts a lot better, just like any type of watering system would. You may have to adjust your watering level, because clay and sand really realistically need 2 different amounts of water, but that's something you're just gonna have to figure out on your own. But as far as the hose goes, we're very happy with it. It's your plants don't have to be right next to it to receive the benefits of the soaker hose. Obviously you can tell all the stuff that we have. These lettuces are just a few weeks old, and the hose is here in the middle, somewhere around here, and the plants are several inches away. They're doing fine. We don't add any other water. All the water it gets is just from the soaker hose. And you can see bell peppers are doing great. You can tell, hopefully you can tell the hose is right about here. This bell pepper, it's not right next to it. Several inches away, it's doing fine. It doesn't look like it's starving for water. The leaves are still nice and soft, even with the sun beating down all day. So, we're very happy with it. And like I said, for the price that you pay, as long as you keep it under the dirt, you should have several years of use out of this, I would suspect. And it's definitely recommended for the price, for the benefits, and for the ease of use. Once it's all set up, just turn the water on and forget about it, and start enjoying the benefits of your garden.